Do you need cash? Do you want to consolidate debt? Premier Credit can help. They provide quick and confidential loans for any reason. Their service is same day and most loans are approved within minutes. You can apply in person or by the phone. Their experienced and knowledgeable loan professionals will leave you feeling confident that your loan is being properly handled in a secure manner. Premier Credit can be reached at 225-667-8100, or you can email WeSayYes@premiercredit.com, or stop by and spin the wheel at 139 Del Norte Avenue in Denham Springs. They're open Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. and are a proud sponsor of Local Leaders, the podcast.
Hi, it's Trisha Johnston, residential realtor with Ladder & Bloom with your real estate tip of the week. The question I get asked more than any other is, how's the real estate market? News reports are generally referring to national or regional sales trends. Most people want to know what the market's like in a more specific area. Let's take a look at one of the tools I use for my clients. This report shows sales trends for single-family homes in Livingston Parish. The light green bar shows the number of active listings each month. The dark green shows the number of sold listings, and the red line shows how many listings went under contract each month. You can see that there were substantially fewer houses for sale in October 2020 as compared to the same month in 2019. The same trend holds true for East Baton Rouge Parish and for Ascension Parish. I can run this report for a specific zip code or subdivision to help buyers and sellers know what the sales trends are for the area they're most interested in. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm Trisha Johnston with Ladder & Bloom, and I'll be back here next week with another real estate tip for you.
December 1993. My best friend comes to my house. He has a VHS tape. Remember those?
I do.
And he tells me, you gotta watch this. Some little guy from Brazil wins a tournament against people twice his size. A bunch of different fighting systems are displayed, and no one was even close to winning against this guy. And best of all, there was no rules. The fighter was Royce Gracie. The tournament was UFC 1, and his fighting style was a hybrid form of traditional Jiu-Jitsu known as Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. Fast forward to today, and Jiu-Jitsu training centers are common in almost all the big cities, and they're becoming even more prevalent in outlying areas. My guest for today holds a black belt in both Jiu-Jitsu as well as Judo. He is head professor at Excelsior Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That's a lot to say, Jiu-Jitsu, with a long-time location in Zachary as well as a new location right here in Denham Springs. We're going to talk about not only what Jiu-Jitsu is, but how you can benefit from it regardless of your age. We're also going to talk about the business side of running a business that's focused on self-defense. So with that, welcome Professor Nathan Lott to Local Leaders Podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So I'm pumped to have you on Local Leaders. I've been a fan of martial arts pretty much my entire life. I actually first saw you on Brandon Browning's Livingston Parish Thread podcast. And my first thought in my mind was, I got to get this guy on Local Leaders. So I reached out to Brandon. He made a Facebook intro, and here you are. Yeah. I'm so happy to have you here. We're going to get into all your business today.
Okay.
But first, I want to know a little about you, where you're from, and how you ended up in Watson.
Yeah, I grew up in Zachary, born and raised, and graduated from Zachary High School. And so that's why our gym is there. When I went to college, I went to school at Southeastern and met my wife there. We dated for a while, got married, and she wanted to live close to her family. So we lived in Albany, in that area for a long time. And I still had a gym. I opened a gym in Zachary while we still lived in Albany. So I was driving an hour and 15 minutes.
Oh, wow.
there and an hour and 15 back to open our gym in Zachary. And so,
That's a track.
yeah, it's a long drive. We've been there 11 years, but about 6 or 7 years ago, 2014, so 6 years ago, we moved to Watson. I had accepted a position as a youth pastor at Greenville Springs, and so it just made sense to live closer.
Sure.
And so we moved over here, and absolutely love it, man. Watson, the Denham Springs area is our new home.
Yeah, it's a great area, and it's funny it seems like the ladies never want to leave their family. The guys always got to go to them. I had the same situation. I actually grew up in Baton Rouge, but when I got married 22 years ago actually, my wife said, I ain't leaving, that far from my mother, so you're going to have to come to me, and that's just what I did. But I find that as a common thread with a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So you love Watson, love hanging out there, so much, in fact, that you're putting a school up here in Livingston Parish.
Yeah, so we've been open a few weeks now. We're in Denham Springs. We just started a new location. We're going to keep the Zachary location just because that's kind of our home base.
Sure.
We originally thought about Watson, but a good friend of mine has actually already opened a gym there. And so we didn't want to interfere with his business at all. Kind of a rule of thumb, I don't want to be within 5 miles of another jiu-jitsu school. So I drove, and we're like just right at 6 miles away from my friend Chris, who's in Watson.
Well, I'll tell you, you're in a great location. I think you picked a perfect location, personally. And we're going to get into all that. I do want to discuss a little bit. You brought up you were a pastor, and so obviously faith is a big part of your life.
Right.
You studied theology. Was that?
Yeah, I have a master's degree from Liberty University in theology, which Liberty University is now number 21 in the college football rankings. I don't know if you know that.
I did not know that.
Think about that for a while.
Did you know that, McHugh?
You free.
So,
8-0 for the first time since 1937.
Right. So, got my master's degree in theology from Liberty.
Interesting.
Yep.
Interesting. So I found it interesting when I was doing my research on you that you are a man of faith, yet you're a pretty bad dude in the realm of self-defense. Would you agree with that?
I'm okay.
Now, there's a lot of misconceptions with really any forms of self-defense and all those sorts of things. These people got to be folks that are delinquents or something like that if they're kids, and so obviously this has gotten better over the years. I was actually talking to someone about this today. On Netflix right now, a popular show is Cobra Kai, which is kind of a spinoff of the original Karate Kid shows. I'm sure a lot of people out there know about that. But so it's gotten better. The reputation of learning to fight or learning to defend yourself is the way I like to put it. You're not really learning to fight. You're learning to defend yourself, especially in jiu-jitsu, which is more of a self-defense form of martial arts, in my opinion. But how much in regard to your faith, how much do you feel that your faith plays in your business? Does it lessen the anxiety that goes along with having your own business and trying to build? Here you are, you're scaling your business now. I would imagine faith plays a pretty good role in letting you know that some things are in God's hands.
Yeah, so that's we actually opened the first school that we had was the idea of a ministry, and we still do that today. We don't force it on anyone, but it's kind of underlying in everything that we do.
Sure. From
our logo to what we have on our t-shirts, our jackets, our patches on our gis, everything. And some people are wearing it and don't even know. It's funny, like somebody says they're an atheist, but has one of our patches on their gis. And so, and which we have, we have Muslim, atheist, whatever religion at our gym. So it doesn't really matter.
Sure.
But yeah, it's one of those things where it was the door open, and we never really planned on being a school like we are right now, and or an organization like we are. Because there's actually multiple schools that are underneath us, affiliate schools. We didn't plan on any of this.
Right.
It just kind of doors open, and we just always trust and have faith that the whole goal is to reach people, in a positive way.
Yeah, that's right. And a very impressive attitude to have with that. Your path to jiu-jitsu didn't really start there. You started pretty much where most people start, Tae Kwon Do and those sorts of things. That at some point led to Judo,
right?
And which at some point led to jiu-jitsu,
right?
And take us through that process a little. How did you eventually end up not only in jiu-jitsu, but making it your business?
Yeah, so and you had mentioned it, just like everybody else when we were kids, there were Tae Kwon Do schools everywhere. There was one Kung Fu school in Baton Rouge. I think it was White Crane Kung Fu. There was a few Judo schools, but you had to drive a long way. I grew up in Zachary, so there was a place in Baker that we went to for a little while. That's where we started, and so we did that. It doesn't take very long when you get into your teenage years and get into a few scuffles to realize that you're not really trained for fighting. You're more trained to like throw a quick block and take off running, which didn't interest me very much. I wrestled a little bit in high school. I didn't compete a lot, but I trained with the wrestling team a lot. There was a boxing school in Zachary that was ran by a family, and I went to the boxing school for a long time. Judo became kind of my passion when I was in my late teens, and then I trained with really great judo guys in my early 20s. And then it was 2000, I think it was 2005 or 2006, when the first jiu-jitsu school came to our area. It was in Hammond. And my wife and I were eating at a little restaurant, and I looked out and there was a yard sign sticking up that said jiu-jitsu. And I was like, no, it can't be real jiu-jitsu. I knew what it was, just like you. The first UFC changed my life. Like,
yeah,
I want to do that, but you'd have to move to California to do it, right?
Right.
And so I saw the sign go up. I ran next door and I saw the gym and I started training, and that was it. It was probably within the first 2 or 3 months that I decided that, and we'd already owned a gym, by the way. We'd already owned a gym by this point. It wasn't a jiu-jitsu. We were teaching I fought in the cage one time. We had some MMA fighters, some, guys who just wanted to train to get in shape. And we threw everything down and just took up jiu-jitsu only when I started to experience the effectiveness, how easily it manipulated the other styles of martial arts.
It wasn't something that when you realized that, it was like some people say that when they come across that, no matter what it is, it's almost like they just know this is where they're being led.
Yeah. So for me, I'm a person who, if something's challenging, I'm there.
Yeah.
I don't, if something's easy, then you're probably not going to find me doing that.
Right.
So for the first class I went to in jiu-jitsu, because of my wrestling and judo background, it was all white belts in the building. There was because it was brand new, but I was beating everybody up fairly easily. It wasn't until I trained with the black belt professor who was there, that I realized, like, man, this is something. And so for me, it was the difficulty of jiu-jitsu. It still is. It's still the challenge. I've been doing it for so long now. But it's still the idea that every time I train, even now, if I'm teaching class, I'm still learning all the time. There's no end to jiu-jitsu.
No. Yeah, it's a beautiful martial art. One of the things that is interesting with what you just said is the fact that when you first practiced in jiu-jitsu,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't like you went out there and you were just beating everybody and all those sorts of things. We all have those frustrations where I'll give you an example. You and I talked about this before we started recording, but I had taken some jiu-jitsu classes because I have just a natural love for it. I don't have the desire to go out there. Look, I'm 46 years old. I'm not fighting in a cage,
right.
But and to be honest, I don't really have a whole lot of problems where I've ever felt like I had to defend myself. It could come across, but people don't just come up and pick a fight with me.
Right.
Now, all of that being said, I love the sport, and so I wanted to learn because I wanted to learn, and I love a challenge.
Right.
I went to that school, and they had me rolling with blue belt.
Right.
And now I'll say this. When I was on top of him, he didn't have an easy time moving me off, and I knew he wouldn't, but he did what jiu-jitsu kind of does, and he waited me out smartly, and eventually after about 7 minutes, I was getting tired.
Oh yeah.
And so he flipped me over and eventually got a little choke on me, and I knew, I'm going to take this to where I know I'm about to go, and then I'll tap.
Right.
And that's what I did, and it was fun, and I loved it.
Oh, yeah.
Shortly after that, it flooded, and that was the end of that for several years, unfortunately. But looking forward to checking y'all's gym out over there.
Oh, man, you're always welcome. You know that.
Yeah. So the purpose of this show and why I had you on here, I was very excited to see that we were having a gym open up here in Denham Springs. BJ Pawn and Gun has been servicing the Livingston Parish community since 1990. If you need it, there's a good chance BJ Pawn has it. So go see them in Denham Springs. They're a proud sponsor of Local Leaders, the podcast. We needed it.
Yeah.
I think there's more than enough people here to support it.
Right.
Especially the young adults. And that's who I want to talk to today, along with the parents, and let them know that this is available. We're going to talk a bunch about what they do. So I want everybody to learn what Jiu-Jitsu really is. Now, it was more than 20 years ago that Jiu-Jitsu kind of came into the mainstream. The Gracies did not invent Jiu-Jitsu, but what they did do is they kind of put it on the map relative to its popularity.
Right. Yeah. So they were really good. They were really good. They're really good at jiu-jitsu, but they were really good at business. They were really good at marketing and getting it out there and showing the world. Before then, jiu-jitsu and really judo, going back to the 1800s, it wasn't kept secret, but it wasn't widespread. Karate and things like that it had kind of just blown up because, different reasons. I won't get into that too much. But so the Gracies basically came and said, this is what jiu-jitsu can do versus other things.
Right.
And that created a market for it, which their name was on the top of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I believe it was his name totally escapes me now. I ought to be embarrassed, but I guess it's the grandfather.
There were two. There was Helio and Carlos.
Yeah, Helio was the one I was thinking of. He was very frail.
Yep.
And what jiu-jitsu did for him, he had always been very frail. And so they wanted to learn an art to where he could defend himself against much bigger people.
Yep.
And so that's where they kind of all got into mastering the art of jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
And to let everybody know, it's a defensive martial art. It's really intended. And correct me, you're the professor here, but correct me if I'm wrong. But it's really intended to get you out of a bad situation. If someone is on top of you, they're much bigger, they're overpowering you. Jiu-jitsu, rather than an offensive martial art where you start out throwing punches and kicks and all these sorts of things.
Right.
Would you agree with me there that it's more of a defensive type art?
Yeah, it's about timing and distance control. So we have a saying that we tell everybody: real self-defense is distance control. I either want to be as far away from you as possible or as close as possible. I don't want to be in that mid-range strike zone because anything could happen. And so all of the techniques of jiu-jitsu come into play whenever we make contact. Whenever you grab me, I grab you. If somebody's throwing a punch, we get really close where their punches don't matter anymore. Right. And then all of the throws of judo, all of the takedowns of wrestling, trips and things like that come into play just to get the fight to a controlled situation. The whole thing is just, we say strike zone, just staying out of the strike zone and then putting the opponent in a place, the attacker in a place where they can't fight anymore. Now, that is not to hurt them; it's just to control them.
Right, and so you're essentially kind of like using their size against them almost. For
the untrained, yeah. Now they both know the same thing, then the size comes into play. But yeah, for the untrained, the bigger they are, the stronger they are. Usually, the easier they are to manipulate. So really, it's the skinny, wormy guys that give you fits. They move very easy, but the big guys are easy to control.
Right, and they're limber. Yeah. Typically, a lot of times, which could cause problems. Now, someone came up to you, Nathan, and I'm sure you've had this question a million times, but they said, "Why should I join Excelsior Jiu-Jitsu? Why should I take Jiu-Jitsu in general?" Right. What would you say?
Well, I'd ask them what their goals are. If you're okay where you are and you don't have any goals, it's going to be very difficult. You have to have a goal of weight loss, flexibility, some pains and stuff like that going away over time. Now, jiu-jitsu hurts, because it is a combat sport. So There are things that get twisted. But I tell everybody all the time, like, you get to choose, especially men. I tell men this all the time. Men get to choose. You can have high cholesterol and high blood pressure and things like that, or you can have your knees and your elbows hurt a little. It's up to you. You're going to have one or the other, but you can choose. And so I tell people all the time, what's your goal? So if you want to lose weight, if you want to get in shape, if you want to learn something new and challenge yourself, if you want to feel a little more confident when you're walking through a store or a parking lot, if you just want to, just get out there and do something that's completely different than what you've seen or experienced in the past, then give it a shot.
Right.
But you have to have a goal. I don't like competing. I'll be honest with that to everybody, but I compete because I have to constantly challenge myself with new goals.
Tiffany C-Card with HomeKey Mortgage combines the experience and knowledge you need to make your mortgage loan a smooth, stress-free process. Reach out to Tiffany for more information on the vast mortgage programs available in the Livingston Parish area. Tiffany C-Card of HomeKey Mortgage, a proud sponsor of Local Leaders, the podcast.
Right. And you know, to me, if your goal is, let's say, getting in shape, losing weight, you're going to be hard pressed to find a better way to do it than to do jiu-jitsu. It will wear you slap out.
Yeah, I think the only thing that burns more calories in an hour is swimming. It's like Olympic style competitive swimming.
Yeah.
That I found. There's several studies that have been done on this where it's anywhere between 900 to 1,200 calories burned in an hour of jiu-jitsu.
Wow.
Where if you ran that long, you're only 300 or 400 calories, unless you're at full sprint, which nobody can do. And so the calories that you burn are pretty way up there. We have guys that come in all the time who are runners, CrossFitters, weightlifters, whatever sport you might have, and they come in and usually they realize within the first 2 or 3 minutes they can't breathe.
Yeah,
it's very different.
It is. It's very different, and but to me, if I got a choice between running on a treadmill for an hour or doing jiu-jitsu for an hour, I want to do something I'm going to learn.
Right.
That's going to benefit me long term. Running on a treadmill can get very mundane over time, and so it's a great option to that. I can definitely attest to the fact that it is a great workout because when I did it, I'll tell you what, about 4 minutes, the beginning of the thing, okay, they do, I can't, you know how you go across the floor and they it's supposed to teach you like side to side.
Right. So it's either called in judo shrimping and judo called hip escape.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So we started out doing that. It's like a warm up, folks.
Right.
And it's not as easy as it looks, especially when you've got a bunch of blue belts and they're just scooting across 100 miles an hour.
Right.
You get down there and you can't even figure out how to slide from one way to the other and go forward all at the same time. It's hilarious.
Right.
But that in and of itself, if you've never done it, it's a little exercise. They call it a warm up. It wore me out for a second just shrimping.
Yeah, we used to do that a lot. The warm up you're talking about, we used to do for a long time. It usually took between 10 to 15 minutes, and a lot of people would make it through the warm up. We got away from that warm up just a little bit, where we just do more like a 2 or 3 minute stretch. And this is something I picked up from my professor, where we do our warm ups where we actually kind of just flow through positions and stuff like that with a partner.
Yeah.
So it seems more time, the time that we have, because you're limited. You only have class for an hour and a half.
Yeah. And
so it just makes the time go a little bit easier.
Yeah, I remember doing that, and I was trying to shrimp, and I'm like, man, I feel like an idiot here because I can't. Right. I'm moving back and forth, but I'm not going forward. And they're laughing, but in a good way.
Yeah,
we're gonna show you how to do it. We've all been there, trust me.
Oh, for sure. We're trying not to get aggravated. The worst is when you have people come in who don't know their left from their right. That's hard. Like, you move to your left, and they do the exact opposite. It's like you're just like, okay,
the other left. Yeah, I hear you. So you're a black belt in judo also.
Yeah.
Now that seems like a very natural transition for me, going from judo, which incorporates a lot of throws, to jiu-jitsu, which is a great. Both the judo gets the opponent on the ground.
Right.
Jiu-jitsu takes over on the ground.
Right.
Is the best way to put that for me. What would you say are the biggest differences between jiu-jitsu and judo?
Well, there's only a limited number of positions on the ground in judo, and there's an abundance of throws. Now, some of the throws of judo we don't use in jiu-jitsu, because you might throw the guy and get him on the ground, but he ends up on top of you or on your back, possibly. But his back hit the ground, so in judo you won.
Right.
In jiu-jitsu, there's only a handful of the throws that we use from judo. Now, the ground positions, there's 28, 29 really dominant ground positions in judo, which are all really great, by the way, pins and arm locks and chokes and stuff like that. But in jiu-jitsu, there are thousands. It literally, every time you turn around, a new position, a new technique, a new sweep, a new submission is being discovered. Like, man, if you move here, and it gets named after whoever invented it, but it's constantly something new.
Yeah.
Where it's not that set, and you're free in jiu-jitsu. You're free to create your own style almost as you go. Like, this works for me. I move this way. It works consistently. I'm going to do that.
Right.
And so it's a lot different in that, in the traditionalism versus your freedom to explore different techniques.
That's interesting. And, judo is another beautiful martial art to me. I can't get enough of judo throws.
Oh yeah, judo's amazing. There's a great judo professor, a coral belt. He was in the military Olympics.
Yeah.
Who teaches in Baton Rouge at the UFC gym on Sherwood. Tiago.
Okay.
He's actually my judo professor.
Really?
He is. If you listen to this, he's a little guy. He's full time with the Coast Guard, but he teaches. He's not only is he really great, but he's a lot like me. He's the idea is to use what he knows to help people, and he's really good though.
Interesting. And my opinion that the three best martial arts to put people in are judo, jiu-jitsu, and wrestling. I think is a great base for someone.
Yeah, and I would add traditional kickboxing to that as well.
Yeah.
So if you have a good base in one of the grappling arts and a decent kickboxer, you don't have to worry about it very much.
No doubt about it. Now, I think the key to spotting a good business is longevity. So one thing I wanted to mention, and also the key to spotting a good business person is someone who knows the right time to scale it.
Right.
And so I wanted to mention the fact that the Zachary gym has been open how long?
11 years now.
11 years, which is huge for a martial arts gym.
Right.
I would imagine the failure rate in the first couple of years is pretty high in that field. Yeah,
most gym owners lose money for the first 5 years, sometimes extreme amounts of money. Just like, for example, and if anybody asks, I'll tell them, but just the mats in Denham, and it's a small area compared to what we have in Zachary, just the mats were over $5,000. Signs $5,000. And so you're looking at probably a $20,000 investment just to get started. And
then you're behind the eight ball at that point.
Then monthly rent and insurance is always expensive and stuff like that. So it takes a while. Zachary's going to be paying for Denham for a little while. We knew that going in, but it took us 11 years to get Zachary to where it could do that.
Yeah, and it speaks to the business side of what you folks do. This is not just a fly-by-night gym or anything like that. I mean, this is a legit black belt, and he has a legit business, and they have really built it. They have over 120 students.
We're over 130 in Zachary.
That's a lot, folks. That's a lot, and great job to all you guys and gals over there. I'm sure you have a lot of help and things like that at your gym.
Yeah, well, it really helps. Yeah, it helps that my kids are all adults now. So my kids have grown up since they started. All of them started when they were 4 years old. So I have a 20, 19, and 17-year-old, and they're all jiu-jitsu champions. They've won everything.
Wow.
So it really helps because I couldn't have done this 5 years ago. I couldn't have opened in Denham 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But now, like for example, my 19 and my 20-year-old daughters will teach the Zachary classes tonight. My 17-year-old son and myself will teach Denham tonight.
There you go. You need more help. You just have more kids, Nathan. That's
too old for that.
I hear you. But that's interesting. You have daughters that are involved heavily and successful in jiu-jitsu.
Oh yeah.
And so that's something that it doesn't make you non-ladylike to learn jiu-jitsu.
Oh no, not at all. Not at all. That's one of the big things you hear all the time. My daughter wants to do cheerleading or whatever, which is fine if that's what they want to do. But I don't think self-defense, especially for coming from a father's perspective, self-defense was never optional for my daughters. They had to learn, and there were times they didn't want to train. There's times they didn't want to go to the gym. Times that they took a few months off. My oldest daughter broke her hand training. As a matter of fact, broke her hand. Just like a freak little accident, got twisted underneath and broke some bones, and she had to take several years off after a couple of surgeries that she had.
Wow. She's
come back and she is 100 miles an hour. She only trained for 2 months after when she first came back, competed in her first tournament, and just ran through the divisions. And
proud daddy.
Yeah, and she's nice. Like, she'll choke you or arm lock you or something like that, and then get up and hug you and tell you how great you did.
Stephanie Berthelot and the crew at SR Enterprise can handle it all, from sheetrock to texture to paint. Give Stephanie a call at 504-432-0960 9284. SR Enterprise, where they spread the paint and you spread the word.
So it's awesome.
That is very nice. Yes, you have to show respect even after you win.
Always respect.
That's right. Well, and they're a chip off the old block in that case. And speaking from a guy with, well, I have twin girls that are 15, and it's nice when you see a little bit of you in your kids, and so I'm sure they love it as much as Dad does, and you taught them.
Yeah.
You taught them right.
Yeah, and it's like a family to them. We spend so much time at the gym, the students there, the moms, the dads, the kids, everybody's kind of become our family, over the years.
It's important.
Right.
We talked about that too, how important it is that when people feel like they're going into a family atmosphere, such as a martial arts gym, it becomes just that.
Right.
And these are people you look out for, way beyond just when you see them during the week at classes.
Right.
So we're going to get into all of that. Now, I do want to talk about, you've been opened up a month in Denham.
Right.
Around a month now.
Right.
Let's talk about the different classes you offer. Are there kid classes, adult classes, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so we have a kids class. We don't have we have had a few calls for kids, but most of our students in Denham are adults for the first month, which is normal because Jiu-Jitsu, most of our students in Zachary are adults as well.
Yeah.
But we do have a kids class pretty much every day of the week except for Wednesday and Saturday. We don't have, and then Sunday we don't have classes at all. So those classes are at 5:30, and then right after at 6:30 we start the adult classes. And in Zachary, we have a day class every day of the week. In Denham, we're only doing Wednesday during the day, but as we grow and get bigger, we'll add day classes. That's for shift workers, police officers, whatever.
Yeah.
Whoever wants to train. And then we have Friday and Saturday night classes where there's no class in Zachary on Friday night or Saturday night. And so a lot of our students from there will drive over and we'll have just a cross train.
Gotcha. Now, do you teach at the Denham location or both?
We jump back and forth.
Okay.
So I was at Zachary this morning. I taught at Zachary for the morning class, and then I'll be at Denham tonight. I'll be tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday. I'll be Zachary in the morning, and then Denham tomorrow night. Saturday we're taking off. We have a tournament coming up this weekend in Jackson, Mississippi.
Yeah.
And so we'll be off for this Saturday, and back on Monday, and just constantly jumping back and forth.
Yeah, man, you're all over the place.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
When you love what you do, it's easy.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah, no doubt.
So Jiu-Jitsu, we talked about it earlier. One of the things I wanted to really, really hammer down was it's not just for guys. And as the professor here mentioned, his daughters take it, and and I'm sure there's would you say you have a good bit of girls at your Zachary location? Yeah, we have. So it's really odd. We never have had a lot of teenage girls, but we have a lot of smaller girls, and then we have a lot of adult women. Fantastic.
So much to the point where for Denham, for example, on Wednesday nights, there's no kids or adult class. There's only adult women, and so we do an adult only women class at 6:30 on Wednesday nights.
Yeah.
My daughter teaches that. You go in there, 8, 9, 10 women on the mats, kind of lock the door behind them, and they just train, go over positions and stuff like that. Same in Zachary. We have a couple of my daughter, and we have another girl at our Zachary gym who's in her. If she hears it, she's gonna be mad at me, but she's in her upper 20s, creeping up on 30, who are world champion level jiu-jitsu practitioners.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. And you started off training them when they did absolutely nothing.
No. So yeah, they're both my students from beginning to where they are now.
Fantastic. Yeah. Wow. And Ronda Rousey played a lot into that. She became very popular.
Right.
When she entered the UFC, the UFC at one point said, we're never going to have women fighters.
Yeah, she came up through Strikeforce, and then from Strikeforce to the UFC. Everybody made a big deal because Ronda, everybody always talks about like she would throw people and armbar them, right? That's the big thing.
Yeah.
When my oldest daughter was 13, we went to a tournament, and she was always kind of very slow pace. She would grab somebody and kind of manipulate and eventually work into a choke. With this particular tournament, she grabs the girl she's fighting, throws her hard, and arm locks her. Like the fight's over in 6 seconds with an armbar, and the girl taps. And I looked over, I said, baby, her name's Alyssa. I said, Alyssa, what happened? She said, everybody makes a big deal of Ronda Rousey armbarring people. I just want to be sure they know I can do that too.
I love it. Yeah.
So, all right.
Yeah, and with the proper training, you can.
Right.
There's no doubt about it. But that was something that I liked to see from the aspect of I knew that was going to get women and young girls out there.
Right.
And it's okay to train. You didn't have to be a tomboy to train in jiu-jitsu and judo and things like that. So I think it's great. One thing I do want to impress on the people in this area and the ladies in this area is get out to that gym, check it out, because it will really, I think it benefits women almost more than men in some ways as far as jiu-jitsu is concerned, because it's an art where if they end up on the ground, they're going to kind of know what to do. Right. Especially against someone that has no idea what they're doing. Right.
I've often said it like this, and I say it if kids are in the room, I'm careful the way I word it, but I just kind of like let that mental image play in your mind. If a man is attacking a woman and he gets her to the ground in a position he would want her in, and I just kind of stop there.
That's exactly what I was getting at.
Then she learns how to use her hips and her legs, the strongest parts of her body, to not only defend herself, but quite possibly to put him in a situation where he's going to go to sleep from a choke or lose a limb, like lose an elbow or wrist or shoulder. And that's it. And for me, I always say it was never been about my daughters or my wife even winning a fight. For me, it's always been about them being able to just get away from a bad situation.
Fantastic.
So that's something we focus on a lot. Every little girl that walks in the gym, I always look at her like, man, this could be my daughter. Like, if somebody grabs her one day, I want to be sure that I did my job and I prepared her to defend herself.
That's awesome. That's awesome that you would think that way too. And it's totally legit. Again, speaking from a guy with daughters and with a wife, they leave the house. I want the peace of mind of at least knowing that if they did get in a bad situation, I've done something to help them to maybe get out of it.
That's exactly right.
So you and I talked a little bit earlier about this too, Nathan, but let's talk about age a little bit.
Age, all right.
We're going to talk about age.
All right.
What age is too old for jiu-jitsu?
Oh, there's no such thing.
No such thing.
So when I talked to Brandon a couple of weeks ago and we did that podcast with him, we had just come out of a competition, short competition season. There were two ladies at a tournament who fought at the what we call the Pan Ams of Jiu-Jitsu, a pretty big tournament. And they were both in their 70s, these two ladies. And so that was like, two grandmothers fighting, both blue belts, which is the second belt for adults. And so it's not like they've been around their entire lives doing this.
Sure.
One of the ladies we had saw fight at a tournament just probably 3 or 4 months ago. We went to Mississippi and she was there fighting. And she fought in the division was 30 and 40-year-old women. And she's 70. And she did well. I don't think she won that tournament, but she did very well. And that to me is an inspiration.
It really is.
The traditional jiu-jitsu not traditional, I probably misspoke when I said that, but the jiu-jitsu that I learned originally was a very athletically based jiu-jitsu. I mean, there was constant injuries and things like that. The jiu-jitsu that I've begun to learn under Professor Matt Baker in the jiu-jitsu system is one that you can probably what jiu-jitsu was meant to be under Elio, really. It was the idea of being able to defend yourself and compete at a high level using the technical aspect of jiu-jitsu versus the athleticism. It's good to have both, but
sure.
But the technical part of it, and you watch this 72-year-old lady get to a position where she gets the other lady to the ground. She's working on sweeps, gets a sweep, puts her on her back, and starts working for arm locks and chokes. That to me is amazing. You know? So the idea is learning a jiu-jitsu that you can do when you're 70, 80 years old, just to keep moving. Now, you might not be competitive. You might not, you might not beat up the 20-year-olds, but you're still moving.
Sure.
So it's awesome.
And let's be honest, Nathan, not everybody's athletic. Some people just don't have the athletic gene. And that's the great thing to me about jiu-jitsu is you don't necessarily have to be Michael Jordan or pick an athlete, but you don't have to be that person in order to excel and defend yourself.
No.
And so that's something that I really want to impress on people out there is don't feel like because you can't slam dunk a basketball goal that you can't learn jiu-jitsu, that you can't prosper in jiu-jitsu.
Right.
I think jiu-jitsu is actually a very beneficial martial art for people with a good mind.
Right. Yeah. If you ever get a chance to look at one of the YouTube videos for Jiu-Jitsu, which is my professor Matt Baker's YouTube channel,
we'll link it in this video.
Yeah, you can watch it, and he always he doesn't like it, but it's a pretty cool intro where he talks about the idea used to be that it took 10 years to even get to the point where you found a jiu-jitsu that didn't rely upon strength and athleticism, but he has developed really a system that I'm pretty amazed with that doesn't require that strength and athleticism from day one.
Right.
And so it's pretty unique. So if you get a chance to watch one of his videos and watch that intro that he does.
Yeah.
Like I said, he doesn't like it because he thinks it looks dorky, but I love it.
Yeah, and I'll link it in this video for you so y'all can find it real easy as you're watching it. But very important to mention is that you know athleticism always helps, but it's not required. As long as you can put one foot in front of the other and follow instruction, you can learn some moves.
And hopefully no left from right. Yeah. And no left from right.
Yeah, learn that before you come. Right. Before you come.
Right.
So confidence is a huge struggle, especially with young adults.
Right.
How can joining Excelsior Jiu-Jitsu help with self-esteem and confidence for these young folks?
Well, the first thing you're going to do, you're going to feel a huge sense of accomplishment just by completing a class. There's a young man. He's gonna laugh when he listens to this. He's in the police world. He's in his mid-20s. He's been training with me for like almost 6 months, and he for the first 4 months would throw up at the end of every class. Like in the middle of class, he runs out the back door, throws up because of the cardio.
Yeah.
But he pushes himself pretty hard. Like I tell people, if you feel like you're pushing too hard, go sit on the side, wait, and come back.
Sure.
He didn't want to do that, right? So he's pushing, goes out and throws up. But you could see when the class is over. You could see the accomplishment. Like, man, I did 2 full rounds tonight. I did 4 full rounds tonight. And you can see that. So that's one thing. You've accomplished something that very few people are able to do.
Sure.
You're going to lose weight pretty quickly, especially if you're eating healthy while doing jiu-jitsu. You're going to build incredible strength. The strength you build from jiu-jitsu is by far greater than what you're going to build lifting weights. Lifting weights develops what we call pretty muscle.
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu develops a core strength that it goes, it's really beyond belief. Wrestlers have it, judo players have it. And then you're just gonna have a sense like somebody who is really skilled, I was able to get them off of me tonight. After a couple of months, you're like, man, I at least got back to a defensive position over somebody who's been training for 10 years.
Sure.
So if the untrained grabs me, I know I can do the same thing.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Yeah, so it creates a different mindset.
Yeah, and with that confidence comes self-esteem.
That's exactly right.
And those are very important for young folks, because that's something once you become an adult, if you don't have the self-esteem and confidence that you should have gotten when you were a young adult, it can affect every aspect of your life. I mean, from your professional life on up, your personal life with your husband or wife or whatever. So, do you offer privates for adults?
We can do private classes for adults. I try to get out of them just because I think the group classes are better. With the private lessons, the only time we really push them is if somebody's new and has never trained before and they want to come in and just do like a quick 30-minute introduction to jiu-jitsu. If somebody's training for a competition, we'll do a private lesson just to fine tune a couple of things, but we spend most of that just live training the whole time, just kind of finding holes in their game, showing them what they need to improve just through actual hands-on.
Well, and speaking of that, now, do you have to? I already know the answer to this, but for the people that don't, do you have to fight or compete in order to take classes?
No, you don't have to. No. So we only have, out of our gym in Zachary, we have 130 plus. We have 21 from our Zachary location going to compete this weekend, and that's a high number.
Yeah, it is.
So no, competing is never required by any means. One, it costs money. I don't think I could. Some gyms like to tell some different organizations will tell their students you have to compete, but it costs $100 to go to a tournament. So I'm not telling anybody you have to go to this tournament, because you're telling them to spend their money where to spend their money, and I don't dictate their lives. But it also, jiu-jitsu is not about beating somebody else. To get promoted in jiu-jitsu, it all has to do with constantly self-improvement. I need to see you getting better at your abilities. You need to be better tomorrow than you were today, and that needs to be a constant growth. And when you do that, it just the belt promotions, the growth in the sport, it just kind of naturally happens, which is a really cool thing. Now you will have to live train against an opponent in class. That's part of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
We don't. I know when everybody thinks about martial arts, they go back to like the scenes in movies where somebody's standing there doing several moves by themselves in a room. Jiu-jitsu is not like that. We practice day one against a live resisting opponent. Because that's
real life.
That's how you know it works.
Yeah, that's right. It's real life.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're not training with a live opponent, when you get in a situation where you're dealing with one, let's say you get, I don't know, mugged or something like that, that's not the time you want to figure out, oh, this really works.
Right.
William Waldrop of TWFG Insurance in Denham Springs can service all of your insurance needs. Offering auto, life, health, and commercial insurance, William Waldrop of TWFG Insurance is a proud supporter of Local Leaders, the podcast.
You know what I mean?
That's exactly right. That's why I tell everybody the story I told Brandon, the story I tell everybody is, I've been training in karate when I was a kid, but when I was I was 12 or 13 years old, I got punched in the face for the first time. It's like, man, I've been doing karate or taekwondo. I've been doing taekwondo for 6 years, and I'm not prepared to block a punch coming at my face. And when I get hit in the face, I don't know how to react to that. Like I flinch and curl up and take a beating. And so how do you know what you're doing really works unless somebody's actually pretty regularly throwing punches at you? That's why I started boxing. Yeah. I wanted to get punched in the face so I'll know how to respond when I get punched in the face. Because if you just shut down, that's it. It's over.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's the idea. So we have people grabbing you. People are going to try to choke you. Now they're teammates. They don't try to break things. They'll grab you in a controlled way, but you know that you have seconds to either tap out, which means they'll let you go, or to find an escape. Right. And that happens from day one. But again, it's controlled and safe. I think we've only had one bad injury in the last 11 or 12 years, and it was a kid who fell in class. And when he fell, he reached back to catch himself and broke his arm.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even really a training thing.
Yeah. That's a great injury record. There's no doubt about that. And yeah, that's something he just mentioned that I do also want to impress is that, when you're in these classes and you're going against these live folks, they know when to, nobody's going to get you in there and try to check you out unless you walk in there. There might be situations, Nathan, where, oops.
Well, there was a guy that called me last week. I was really disappointed last Friday night. I was at home after the Zachary morning class, and a guy called, and I answered the phone like, "Hello, Excelsior Jiu-Jitsu." He says, "Hey, is this the head guy?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Hey, are you good?" I said, "I guess I'm okay. I don't know." And he said, he did a different martial arts style. He said, I want to test you and see what you got. I said, okay, that's fine. And I said, be at the gym tonight, 6:30. Signed a waiver. You come on the mats and we'll see. It's fine with me. He didn't show up.
Imagine that.
Yeah, so he would have got choked.
Yeah.
But 99% of the people walk in the door and they come in with great attitudes. They come in and say, I don't know anything. I've never done anything. I'm in terrible shape. I just want to learn from day one. And we treat them just like we would our family members. We take them and we walk them through baby steps, teach them how to, put on their uniform, put on a belt. We teach them how to do the basics, and then we protect them. Like put them with only people we know who are not going to hurt them, people who are more experienced, who can teach them as they go. So it's a safe environment.
Yeah, very good. And that's exactly right. Is you want to train with people that know what they're doing to the extent of, Joe Rogan will say, you never want to put, a white belt in there with a blue belt that doesn't know what he's doing, because he'll hurt them. Right. Not real, or he or her. Right. Not realizing that they just don't. It's hard to put it into words, but they just don't know when that stopping point is, I guess. And sometimes there's more injuries than there need to be. So it's good. It's good that you do that. And interesting that guy didn't show up. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I was looking. I think maybe my willingness to accept him might have scared him off a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, what do you say to that?
I was kind of excited though.
Yeah. So another thing that you talked about on the Livingston Parish thread, I thought it was very important. Y'all discussed the police and they're being limited kind of with regard to the use of force, especially when they're required to, or I say required, they're not required, but when they have to apply a choke.
Right.
And obviously they've had some really bad situations happen with that. The gentleman or I call him gentleman, I think he's a piece of trash, but the guy that killed the gentleman in Baltimore,
yep.
Put his knee on his neck. That was awful. Stupid, horrible. That guy was had a lot more issues than just he didn't know how to choke somebody properly.
Right.
That being said, it did kind of put a light on the importance of training of officers. And you made a really good point in y'all's podcast in that you said, when you're applying a choke and you're experienced in jiu-jitsu and you train properly and you're a police officer, you can feel them going to sleep.
Right.
And that's where the training kind of comes in. That's why it's so important. If you're not, and if I go and I choke somebody right now, I'm choking them until they don't move anymore.
Right.
That might be too long, right?
Right.
And
yeah, so I was a blue belt, maybe early purple belt, way back when I had the opportunity to train with a guy who was 4th or 5th degree black belt, and I was in a position where I was about to try to jump over his legs. Right, he was using his legs to get me in a bad position. I was about to jump over. I didn't move. I was just kind of thinking in my mind like I'm going to jump over. And he whispered to me. He said, and this guy's Brazilian. He said, Nathan. He said, you're about to jump. It's the wrong thing. And so we finished a round. At the end, I looked at him. I said, Professor, how did you know I was about to jump? He said, your breathing changed.
Whoa.
And so that was eye-opening to me.
Yeah.
So somebody had trained that much that he could feel and hear my breathing pattern change and know what I was about to do.
That's awesome.
And and I've noticed over the years that I've done that. I close my eyes when I'm training and I listen to the person. I listen to their sounds, feel their body movements, hear the way their breathing changes, and they're about to move and how they're going to move before they ever move. People think that I'm really fast. I'm not. I'm incredibly slow, actually. I just know where you're going before you go there. And my professor just completely manipulates me. He knows where I'm going before I go there.
Wow.
And so it's really cool. So one of the things that we see is if somebody trains to the level of blue belt, which means they've trained a year, you see them lock a choke. And I saw this just this morning with one of our blue belts at our gym in Zachary. He locked a choke. And I could see him as he squeezed the choke, he looks over at the face of his opponent, or his training partner in this case. And he's looking, and just as his skin color is changing because the blood's being shut off, he opened his hand and let go of the choke. Because he knew I had it. There's no point in finishing that.
Yeah. And
so you start that progression, and you know when the breaking points are. You know when the person's going to go to sleep, and you can control that.
Yeah.
And it's much different. Now the untrained, day one white belt, show them how to lock a choke. They're going to lock a choke and they're going to squeeze, and they don't know. They have no idea. And so these defensive tactics courses that police do, it's 4 hours of mat time per year, I think. And then one department I think I talked to said they were 8 hours a year. 8 hours a year, but that's one day. They go train for one day. It's not enough.
No.
So I say anybody, like you take your profession, any profession you have, and you're going to do hands-on training in that profession for 8 hours a year, just 8 hours a year. It's not enough. You're not going to be good at your job. There's no way to be good at your job.
Yeah.
So it just needs to be more. And I don't know the answer to how to get it to them, but I know I'll do anything it takes. A department could call me right now and say, come help us. And I'll go help. Yeah.
Let me make a call.
Yeah.
One thing and I agree with you, and I don't think that, I know a lot of police officers and very good friends of mine, and most of them would enjoy this type of training to begin with.
Right.
So, and I know, different departments have budget issues, things like that. Those things can be worked out.
Right.
What the starting point is getting in contact with these guys, and you can work something out. But it's very important, because I think if you can show a track record as a police department that you're making that effort,
right,
That's important.
Right.
You know, we give our officers all this training. We've got a black belt right here in town that we train through. So hopefully, you coming into Livingston Parish, maybe we can get a bunch of those sheriff's office and city police guys over there. And
and for administrators, I would tell them it's also important if you've been choked, like if a police officer comes in and I choke them every day for 2 months.
Yeah.
Right. And they know what it feels like on the receiving end.
Yeah.
They're less likely to give it.
Right.
So that's important as well. So administrators are sitting back thinking, you know, I don't know if we want to do this because do we really want to teach them? Yes, you do.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, it's just like when they stun they tase them.
Right.
They actually have to get tased to
pepper spray, same thing.
Pepper spray, same thing. Right. And that's so they kind of know the other end of that, and that way they can judge how much force they want to use. I would imagine.
Right.
In that respect, so they're available for that. We've covered a lot today. We covered, young adults, kids, old adults like me. You're never too old to take it, and you're probably pretty much never too young. I mean, you don't want infants in there, but
no. So
what's the youngest you go?
Yeah, so people call all the time. There's some karate schools and stuff like that take 3 and 4 year olds. We never did. One, I don't think I can teach a 3-year-old when to let go of the choke.
Yeah,
I don't think that's responsible. I also don't think I don't want to teach 3 and 4 year olds how to punch.
Yeah.
And kick either. I always recommend for 3, 4, and even maybe some immature 5-year-old. Maybe they're not fully, they're not up there on. My son was a little bit behind. Boys are usually a little bit behind girls, so I use that as an example.
Yeah.
I always tell parents, find a gymnastics school and put them in gymnastics. They're going to learn. Great. They're going to learn core strength. They're going to learn how to do a pull up, push up, flexibility. Kids who come to me when they're 6 or 7 from gymnastics are immediate monsters in the gym. They're so good.
No doubt about it.
And so we start at 5. We have a lot of 5-year-olds. So that's usually the youngest that will go. And even then it's I let them come in and try classes for a month. They do a 1-month trial. They basically pay for a month. They get their uniform and they do a 1-month membership. It's nothing past that. And in that month, I tell them, if at the end of the month, if your kid's not mature enough, I'll say you probably need to wait a little while.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the parents will come and say, I just don't think he or she is ready. Yeah. And which is fine. But that's kind of the way we go through that process.
And that's a good thing. And something I definitely wanted to bring up was the fact that you can. It's a commitment not only from the parent or the kid's aspect, but also from your aspect. Right. Kind of committing together. So Nathan wants to make sure that everybody's all in.
Right.
And so they do offer a kind of, I don't know if you call it a trial period or whatever, where you can come in and you can see what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is all about and see if it's for you.
Yeah, just a 1-month membership, that trial membership. We offer that to everybody.
Yep.
You can go on our website, ExcelsiorBJJ.com. You can sign up for that trial. It starts your first day of class. You walk in. We have you just do a little sign in on an iPad, give you your uniform, and you hit the mats running. At the end of the month, you tell us, I'm going to be a full-time student here or not.
Right.
Right.
No hard feelings either way.
Yeah. No, you just have a really cool martial arts uniform if you quit.
There you go. Good Halloween costume for the future. Now, one thing I do on this show and with everybody is I try to find some fun facts related to what we talked about.
Okay.
So I found some. There was a lot with Jiu-Jitsu, but I found some that you probably know all these, but I'm going to cover them for the people out there that may not. And so the first one is Jiu-Jitsu is a Japanese word. Of course, most people know that, where Ju means gentleness and Jitsu means art. So actually, Jiu-Jitsu is translated as gentle art.
It is. Yeah, we often laugh about that. That's actually a joke in the Jiu-Jitsu community. For the first couple of years, you feel like there's nothing gentle about it. My professor says you always feel like the nail and never the hammer.
Yeah.
So it takes a little while to get there, but that's the goal, is to get to the point where you can flow through things with gentleness. Yeah. Yeah.
And here's another one for you. It actually takes, on average, between 8 and 13 years to become a black belt.
That's right.
No other martial art takes that amount of time.
Yeah. You also have to be an adult. There's no kid black belts in Jiu. You have to be 16 to get into the adult belt system.
Yeah. And it's weird, in my, we talked about a martial art that I took prior years, and it was very strange to bow to kids.
Yeah,
I have respect for them, but it's very strange to to
so
kids.
so you have some of these martial arts styles now where it's like if you sign a 2-year contract, you're guaranteed a black belt during that time and things like that, or 18 months, I think was one that I heard just the other day. For me, I've always thought that's irresponsible because to a kid, an 8-year-old kid, black belt's it, right?
Right.
And so, when we were a kid, we all grew up with I forget the name of that Disney show, but it was Ernie Reyes Jr. Remember, he was a little karate guy. You know what I'm talking about? A long time ago.
Yeah.
And then Three Ninjas and stuff like that. So, you give an 8-year-old kid a black belt. I've heard it said like this from one of our old professors. Said somebody breaks into your home in the middle of the night, and mom and dad know they hear something like, okay, let's get the gun, let's call it 911, whatever. An 8-year-old who's watched too many movies jumps out in front of this bad guy. Hiya, what happens to your 8-year-old?
Yeah.
So the 8-year-old needs to understand, like, you don't know anything yet.
Right.
You might be able to. And one thing I've done, I've had kids who have taken karate classes and stuff, which there's nothing wrong with that. Please don't misunderstand.
No.
But they'll come in and they'll start talking about how they punch and kick. And I say, okay, well, let me explain the difference. And I'll stand there and I'll say, I want you to punch me as hard as you can. And they look at me like they're crazy. I said, look, and I just open up my stomach and I said, where would you punch? And they said, I'm going to punch you right in the stomach. I said, okay, punch me as hard as you want to. And these kids will punch me right in the stomach. And they've broken boards in their karate classes, right?
Yeah.
And they punch me in the stomach and they pull their hand back like, ow, my hand. And I look at them and I say, that's the difference between hitting something fake and hitting a human.
Right.
Bones are hard.
Yeah.
Men are hard.
Yeah.
And so you're going to hurt yourself. That's why we don't punch or kick, right? So it's irresponsible. I wouldn't give a black belt. I wouldn't put a black belt around somebody's waist who's only trained jiu-jitsu for 3 years. It's irresponsible because they don't know anything yet.
Yeah.
And so, so that's important to us.
I think
Dane Arnold with iTrade Exchange has been enabling small business in the Livingston Parish area to save cash through his network of over 300 participating Livingston Parish businesses. Saving cash by trading services with other exchange members is what iTrade Exchange is all about. For more information, contact Dane Arnold at 225-205-3640 or visit iTradeExchange.biz.
one of the quickest rises to black belt with jiu-jitsu, and of course his nickname was the Prodigy, and he was a prodigy. It was BJ Penn.
BJ Penn, that's right.
I don't know how fast he got his, but I want to say
three years.
That's unbelievable.
There's been a few like that.
That's freak though, man. That's so.
But BJ won some major competitions to do that, and there were a couple of those. Coyotero's one of them. Lloyd Irvin. There's been a handful over the years, but these are guys who didn't. These are guys who were really skilled in sambo, judo, wrestling. They were already really talented. No-gi grapplers, where they would grapple no-gi a lot, and so when they put on the gi, they were just 3 or 4 steps away from that black belt level anyway. It's not like they stepped into a mat and had no experience.
Yeah, and in BJ's case, I mean, he had dexterity like nobody's business.
Right,
this is a guy that could take his foot and put it behind his head, and that's a pretty good asset to have in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I don't have that.
Yeah, me neither. One day, I used to do full splits back in the day, but not anymore. You tighten up when you get older a little bit, I think. Unless you keep doing it, I guess then it's not an issue. Now, you also brought up gi and no gi, and I'm glad you did. I want to just take a minute and discuss your thoughts on that one, and I'll give you my perspective both ways.
Okay.
Gi, I think gi has a place, and I think no gi has a place, and the reason I say that is the limited number of classes that I took gi. Right. And some of the moves were, they were choking me out with the gi.
Right.
But in a legit real life situation, most people aren't going to have a gi on.
Right.
So that move wouldn't work necessarily.
Okay.
That would be my argument for no gi.
Okay, I'll completely change that for you in a moment.
All right, and that's okay. And so go ahead.
Okay.
I guess that's what I have to say on
that.
Well,
and that's a big thing that people who don't train a lot talk about. Like I get calls from gyms like we're a no-gi only. And for those who don't know, gi is the uniform. No-gi is just shorts and t-shirt. The difference in no-gi is you're not allowed to grab any material of the clothing. One of my police officers, for example, who trains at the Zachary gym, he said in 16 years of being a police officer, he's only arrested one guy who was naked. Right? So everybody else had clothes on.
Right.
everything we do in the gi could be done with a t-shirt, a collar shirt, a jacket, anything that you wear. And there's actually videos by some of the Gracie family members showing how all those chokes move over.
Sure.
But the idea of jiu-jitsu is position and control. And so, so gi and no gi is the same jiu-jitsu. It's the exact same thing. The only difference is if it's no gi, instead of me grabbing your sleeve, I'll grab your wrist. And instead of me grabbing your collar, I grab the back of your neck. Right. And instead of me grabbing, your belt or maybe your hip, I go for underhooks and I lock my hands around your waist. So it's the exact same thing, the exact same techniques, the exact same arm locks. It's just an understanding of hand placement of where to go. So it's the exact, it doesn't matter if you have the gi on or not. The exact same techniques are there.
Yeah.
And so once you start to understand that, it doesn't matter. Now, if you take the gi off, there are some chokes and stuff you won't be able to do because of the rules of no gi. But in a street situation, in a real life situation, if you're wearing shorts or if you're wearing a tank top, if you're wearing a t-shirt, if you're wearing a pullover, no matter what, I'm using that and I can show you how to use that. So,
I like it.
So it doesn't really matter.
That's a great explanation for that. And something I always wondered, especially because they did use that on me one time, and I'm like, but I mean, I'm not gonna have a gi on if I'm at Blockbuster Video or something. Ooh, I'm dating myself now. Blockbuster Video. Yeah, if I'm there for sure, I wouldn't have a gi on. Yeah. But so that's true though. I mean, this is kind of like
right. In fact, the t-shirt itself actually chokes a little worse because it actually cuts into the skin. Where the reason we wear the gi is to practice the chokes that you would do with a shirt, but they're really, really thick, so they're not going to tear. So your shirt, I would choke you with it, but it's going to mess up your collar, and every class you'd have to get a new t-shirt. Yeah. With the gi, it doesn't do that. And so you could practice everything that we do with a t-shirt. You could practice doing the gi. You just have to understand it's the exact same hand placement with any type of clothing material at all. Yeah. Like, for example, when I teach things where you have to grab legs, I don't teach them grabbing the material on the knee. I teach grabbing the material by the hip, because they're at least going to be wearing shorts. Yeah.
And if you notice in all these explanations, and this is the one of the things I love about jiu-jitsu, is he's talking about transition. So you notice, he mentioned your upper body. He's talking about your hips and your wrist and all these things. The great thing about jiu-jitsu is it's like a chess match.
Right.
And everything is a transition. If he's mounted me, and I'm trying to get out of that, and I kind of push, and I'm trying to gain side control on him, as they say. I'm transitioning from underneath to side control. Then I'm trying to get mount on him. Right. All of that is transitional, and believe it or not, my mind the whole time is thinking 3 moves ahead. In some cases, I'm definitely thinking of the next move that's coming out. Right. That's what makes it a beautiful martial art, is that, like you said, there's 1,000 different moves, thousands probably, right, and still being invented. I mean, there's every day people are coming up with, wait a minute, I can get out of. There was a few moves a few years ago. I can't even think off the top of my head what they were, but there was supposedly no way out of these moves, and then people find a way out. They're like, oh no, you can do this or that and get out. When we were just talking about that collar choke that they applied on me, I did not think they were going to be able to do that. Oh yeah. I'm like, there's no way you're going to be able to do that. And he's like, just watch. and look, I was on top of this guy for a while, and I had him. He was stalemate, and we kind of laid there for about 5 minutes, and he would move a little bit, and boy, I'd pull him back, and I'd be like, I don't know where you think you're going, Right. And I'm thinking, I'm dominating this guy. Trust me when I tell you, 5 minutes into it, I'm going with my own gi.
All right. Yeah, it doesn't take long.
That's cheating. He's like, no, it's not. We can use it.
All within the rules.
Yeah, I love it, and it had a great time doing it. Another fun fact: Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is an industry, actually quite large. Yep. $2.7 billion with a B dollars a year.
That's probably right.
Yeah, that's impressive, especially considering 30 years ago.
Yeah, tournaments are getting really big. They'll be anywhere between a small tournament as 500 or 600 people, where it used to be just 50 to 100 when I first started. And then, they have tournaments where there's in the thousands of people. And then there's some of the big pay-per-view events now, which are starting to come up. Sure. Which is really exciting to see.
Yeah.
So
I think it's great.
yeah, it's awesome to see it and see how many people are transitioning over to the sport. So it's going to be really cool.
Absolutely, and that leads me into famous people that are actually Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts. I think Joe Rogan's done a lot for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Right? Yeah, Joe Rogan,
because he promotes it so well on his show, and he has a 4 million listeners on YouTube. That's a big audience. But also people might be surprised to know that another Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt is The Undertaker.
Yeah.
How about that?
How about,
I ain't one to fight that dude.
how about Al Bundy, Ed O'Neill?
Yeah, who would have thought?
Yeah, legit black belt. Yeah, he took him 13 years to get his black belt.
How about that? Yeah. Ed O'Neill, black belt, married with children.
Yeah,
that's right. Also, who was the other one? There's the guy from King of Queens. That show King of Queens. You watched it before, haven't you?
Paul Blart.
Yeah,
whose name I can't remember. Kevin James.
Kevin James. That's it.
Yeah,
I think he's a black belt.
I'm not sure.
Well, I know he's trained.
I'm not sure about. Yeah, I'm not sure about. Ashton Kutcher's a brown belt. There's quite a few. The guy who passed away, the Fast and the Furious guy, Paul Walker, was a brown belt, legit brown belt. Like these are not just everyday. I mean, they were really legitimate practitioners.
Yeah, and when you put a black belt on somebody, and you're in jiu-jitsu, let me tell you, you're vouching for them, number one, so to speak.
Right.
And it's a legit belt.
Right.
That you have earned from your level because of your commitment for all those years and skill. And also, though, your professor, he's kind of putting his name on you.
Right.
And saying that you have that skill and that you've put in your time and those sorts of things.
Right.
So anytime you come across, to me, demands enormous respect for any black belt of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specifically. Top three reasons people practice the art of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu: general fitness, exercise, and self-defense.
Yeah.
Doesn't surprise me at all. We talked a little bit about that today. And the last one I'm going to cover on that, there are approximately 5,000 black belts of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is actually a very small number considered or compared to some other martial arts.
Yeah,
Tae Kwon Do, for example.
Yeah, I think the number might be a little bit higher now. Over the last,
I think it was last year's stats.
Yeah, over the last, there's I think it's creeping up. When I first started, there were only 3 in the state of Louisiana.
Wow.
Yeah, so
3
when I first started training. Now there's a lot more.
How long I don't know if I asked you how long you've been total training.
Oh my goodness. So 15, 16 years for jiu-jitsu only.
How long total for judo, jiu-jitsu, taekwondo? How long have you been in martial arts?
Since I was 6 years old. So I'm 44.
Wow.
Yeah, so
forever. Your life, man.
Forever. Yeah,
that's awesome.
I love it though. It's what I do.
Yeah. And folks, I do want to mention they're located right. What's a good landmark right there?
Probably Mr. Gaddy's.
Yeah, Mr. Gaddy's parking lot.
Airborne
Extreme, big trampoline place is right there. You're right next to it. Right in the center of town on range.
Yeah.
Actually, it's interesting. I'm also an outside sales rep for Fair Calhoun Paint, and we used to have our paint store right in that building. Before it. They've redone it now. It's beautiful.
Oh, it's nice.
Back in the day, it had potholes and stuff. We eventually moved out of there.
Yeah, brand new parking lot. It's
nice. Tires every time you drive in there. But now, it looks great, and I love that y'all are conveniently located. I'm going to link Nathan's Facebook page for his business. I'm also going to link his website, all those sorts of things, so
cool.
You'll know exactly where to find him. Now, Tell these good folks the best way to contact you guys. You talked about setting up a class.
Right.
They can go online and actually do all that?
Yeah, so you can do it. Well, online you're going to be able to register for that trial membership, that 1-month membership. Okay. If you want to set something up, it's actually my cell number that's on the website and the Facebook page. So I tell anybody, you can text me, you can call me, you can send an email to the Facebook message, whatever you want, however you feel comfortable. And I'll answer any questions that I can. If we want to get together for just a little private 30-minute session just to go over what jiu-jitsu is, if you want to come by and just stand outside the window and watch a class, you can do any of that. We don't mind. If you want to, come over to the Zachary gym and see what that looks like with a full class, we're one big family and we welcome anybody.
I love it. And so listeners, feel free to reach out to me as well, and I can put you in touch. Great folks over here, and they're doing great things for our parish in Livingston Parish. So let's check them out, support them, It's a new business here, and they're hitting the ground running, and there's always room for more. So I bought you some gifts. I can't really pull them out right now. We're in a different room, and I wasn't sure how much room we'd have, but I got a bunch of T-shirts in there. Nathan was nice enough to bring me a T-shirt, so next week I'm going to wear that T-shirt on my episode just to remind y'all of this exciting new business right here in Denham Springs. I'd like to thank McHugh David for engineering my podcast as always. Thank you very much, sir. My guest for today, Professor Nathan Lott of Excelsior Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the Livingston Parish News for the space, and all you viewers and listeners for your support. Please follow me on all my social media and spread the word. I want to thank all my sponsors for this show. These are all local businesses that sponsor me. I could not do any of this without all of them. If you're interested in sponsoring local leaders or appearing on the show, please reach out to me by emailing jim@paintpodcast.com. Until next time, I am Jim Chapman, reminding you to love your community, support
Sporting Center in Denham Springs is your one-stop shop for team sports equipment, school uniforms, and promotional goods. Conveniently located next to the Antique Village since 1977. Sporting Center, your business means everything to them because your name rides on everything they do.